Today we're talking about one of the most sustainable running shoes ever made, the ADIDAS X ALLBIRDS FUTURECRAFT Footprint. Now in this video I'm going to be talking about the shoe's sustainability, its tech specs and what I think on its performance. I have timestamped the video, so if you are more interested in hearing about one particular chapter, you can refer to the timestamp down below. Alright, so the FUTURECRAFT Footprint is a shoe that two seemingly competitor brands, ADIDAS and ALLBIRDS, joined forces in making. The two brands had a common goal of developing a performance running shoe that has only a fraction of the carbon footprint compared to a traditional running shoe. Typically, a shoe is responsible for 14 kilograms of CO2 equivalents in its lifetime, whereas the FUTURECRAFT Footprint is only responsible for a mere 2.98 kilograms. In developing the shoe, the design team looked at a typical shoe's life cycle from the time materials are grown to the time the product is disposed. They found 5 key areas where they can make this product more eco-friendly. Now the first key area is the product making phase. Here their strategy is to use natural and recycled materials. Pretty interestingly, the upper contains fibers from eucalyptus leaves which have really good natural heat management properties. The shoe is also an all-white color, and this is to avoid the color dyeing process, which is energy intensive. You'll notice that the overall design of the shoe is quite minimal, and this is to minimize material weight. And you'll also see that there's stitched embroidery to give the shoe some structure. When it comes to packaging, the shoes are packed into a much smaller box than usual, which takes up a lot less space in a shipping container. There also is no unnecessary packing paper, and the shoe box is not dyed. In terms of transportation, the shoes are shipped from production in Southeast Asia using biofueled ocean freighting, powered specifically by recycled cooking oil. And then in terms of use, I think a shoe is sustainable only if it's useful, but we'll talk about this in a sec. And then in terms of the end of life phase, when a shoe is eventually disposed, they've taken a conservative assumption of where the product will end up and factored this into their CO2 equivalent figure. The first thing I noticed about the shoe is how insanely light it is. It's by far the lightest shoe I own, lighter than any of my racing shoes. A women's UK 6 weighs 130 grams and my UK 10 weighs 172 grams, which is insane. When you have a look at the minimal design, the lack of heel counter, the lack of structure, the slick materials they've used, and the minimal rubber outsole, it's quite easy to understand where they save the weight. The stack height on a pair of these is 26 millimeters on the heel and 15.5 on the forefoot, giving the shoe approximately a 9.5 millimeter drop. Underfoot, the shoe's cushioning is neither firm nor soft and flexes the way you'd expect it to. And on the outer sole, we have a natural rubber placed only on key wear areas. ADIDAS compares the shoe to the Adizero RC3 in terms of its performance capabilities. It's a lightweight trainer, so it will suit shorter, faster running than most, but it's not a specialist racing flat. In a nutshell, it's designed for someone looking for an eco-friendly shoe that has a lightweight design and low to the ground feel. This whole upper is a really amazing piece of work, especially considering that it's largely made from recycled material. The upper is fairly minimal and structureless, with only a small heel piece here at the back. And initially I got the feeling that the upper was a bit fragile, but I realized that this is only because the laces are very thin and slightly elasticated, so are quite intricate in terms of lacing up. As I mentioned earlier, the upper has some stitched embroidery just to give it an extra bit of strength. And then you have this thin tongue that extends quite far down the foot just to give you a comfortable fit. Because the shoe is so light and sock-like, you naturally get a good lockdown. And there's this minimal heel counter which I was initially a little bit concerned about in terms of friction, but it works nicely, and there's a bit of padding on the sidewalls just to give you a bit of comfort. In terms of fit, I did go half size down compared with my typical Adi sizing. I would say the width is pretty regular and it is a low volume cut, so this upper does sit quite close to the top of your foot, but it is a mesh fabric with a bit of elasticity, so there is a bit of give. So is this shoe going to save the planet? Most definitely not. As the saying goes, the best product you can buy is the product you don't. Patagonia once had an ad telling consumers not to buy their jackets, but ironically this led to an increased sale of their jackets. So the best thing we consumers can do is purchase product more responsibly. The one critique I have for the FUTURECRAFT Footprint is that it's not the most versatile and practical shoe. In order for a shoe to be sustainable, it also needs to be practical. And I don't see the shoe fulfilling runs other than shorter distance or speedy runs, not so much the bulk of training that occurs at slower paces over longer distances. So it would be nice if they designed a shoe that was a bit more cushioned, that could be again a nice affordable alternative to the more commercial offerings like the Solar Glide or Boston. On the other hand, I think the shoe is really good for the market because it commercializes talking about CO2 numbers. And hopefully in 5 years' time, more brands are talking about their carbon emissions in a similar manner they talk about the heel to toe drop, so that consumers can make a more educated decision about their purchase. In terms of price point, I think it's reasonable and non-outlandishly priced for a highly recyclable or sustainable shoe. Personally, the shoe shows me the low-hanging fruit that brands can adopt to be more sustainable, such as packaging their shoes in smaller, non-dyed boxes where possible, or using recycled materials in their upper. Ultimately, all brands in the industry want to be seen as progressive and eco-friendly, but they also want to increase the number of shoes they sell. So you can't have both unless you offset the negative environmental benefits somewhere. So in conclusion, I really like the FUTURECRAFT Footprint. It's a niche shoe that not everyone can use for training, but it has its place in the market. It's an innovation that I'm glad to have and glad to be able to use, but I'll probably only use it as a lifestyle shoe or take it out for the odd run. So thanks for watching this review. Give my channel a good old subscribe if you enjoy chatting about footwear, and follow me on social media. Otherwise, we'll see you in my next video coming out later this week. Cheers, bye.